With all the focus on the Euros and the Copa America during the summer, it was easy to forget that there was another international tournament going on. And now I don't mean the Olympic football tournament. I'm talking about the OFC Nations Cup, Oceania's equivalent of the Euros. So seeing as we covered the Euros and the Copa America in challenge videos at the start of the summer, now let's do the OFC Nations Cup as well. And I know I'm about 2.5 months late, but I promise you, this is a challenge worth watching. And challenge is the key word, as I will attempt to win this tournament by beating New Zealand. The All Whites were favourites for this year's tournament, and not only did they lift the trophy, they also won every match and didn't even concede a goal. And if you've ever checked the results on a long-term FM save, you'll notice that New Zealand usually dominate. So here is how this challenge will work. I have recreated this year's tournament in the FM editor, all 7 nations represented, New Caledonia having pulled out in real life, Vanuatu hosting Group A and the knockout rounds, while Fiji hosts the fixtures in Group B. That means much like our Copa America challenge earlier in the summer, I get 6 attempts to complete this challenge, and if I get eliminated, I must move on to a different nation. Should I fail with all 6 nations, I will never manage in Oceania on Football Manager again.
That's too big a risk.
This time round, I'm not going to try and recreate the real life squads because the database may not have all the players for some of the smaller oceanic nations in there. So let's get started with the team that came through the preliminary round and are rank outsiders for the competition, Samoa. When taking the job at the start of the game, Samoa are ranked joint 191st with Somalia. Side quest, let's overtake American Samoa in the rankings. The squad I've selected is made up of a mix of players from Samoan teams, New Zealand lower league clubs and free agents. Hamilton Pama will be our rock in defence, partnered by one of our most promising youngsters, Philip Fatialofa. We'll be looking for Kingsley Sinclair to create from the wings, and hopefully we'll get some goals from Kaya Cahill, son of former Australia international Tim. Our warm-up friendlies were not very impressive, a dull 0-0 with American Samoa, and a heavy defeat to Vanuatu. Tactics-wise, no fancy liberos or false nines, just trying to put everyone in their best positions, which led me to a 4-4-2 diamond. In our first game at the OFC Nations Cup against Tahiti, we shocked everyone, ourselves included, when Kyle Cahill gave us the lead. And we nearly held out, but unfortunately Tahiti managed to equalise with 9 minutes to go. Still, a 1-1 draw, can't be too unhappy with that. Next we would face Group B hosts Fiji, and this was much tougher, as we found ourselves 2 goals down in the opening 5 minutes. Halfway through the half we found ourselves 3 goals down and possibly staring embarrassment in the face. But we did a better job of containing Fiji in the second half and even pulled a goal back. Kaya Cahill the man once again. As expected, we sat bottom of the group going into the final match day, but still with a mathematical chance. If we could beat Papua New Guinea, that is. And we once again surprised ourselves by taking the lead. Tumoa Leo scoring just before half-time. Long ball football for the win. Alas, our opponents also went route 1 and took all of 55 seconds to equalise in the second half. And we were then picked apart as Papua New Guinea took the lead, as well as control of the game, bamboozling us with high crosses and moving into an unassailable lead. A clanger from the keeper allowed us to grab a late consolation, but that didn't change the outcome, as our first attempt ends in group stage elimination. Our side quest didn't go well either, as we slipped back to 194th in the world rankings, but how did American Samoa go up when they didn't even take part in the tournament? So for our next attempt, we take charge of the team that just eliminated us, Papua New Guinea. A much stronger prospect than Samoa, as this team sits inside the top 150 in the rankings. And in addition to domestic league players, we have squad members who play their football in Australia, such as Alwyn Comalong, who will be our rock in defence. David Brown will be our creative force on the flanks this time, and we'll also be looking for goals from Melbourne Knights striker Tommy Semi. Tactics-wise, we went for 3 at the back and a pressing style, and it produced decent results in our warm-up friendlies. We would play Fiji and Tahiti in our first 2 games of the OFC Nations Cup, 2 teams that, according to the rankings, we're quite evenly matched with. And so it proved, as Brown's opener against Fiji was cancelled out by a second half equaliser, and then Semi's early goal against Tahiti also received an equalising response, as both games finished 1-1. Nevertheless, with Fiji and Tahiti going head-to-head on the final match day, while we played Samoa, we actually had a pretty decent chance of going through. Tommy Semi set us on our way once again, and this time there would be no equaliser, as Kepo scored in the second half. Indeed, he would then go on to nab himself a hat-trick, completed after Samoa had grabbed a consolation, as we earned an emphatic win, more than enough to qualify for the semi-finals, but only in second place, which meant we would face Group A winners New Zealand next. For the first time in this tournament, we fell behind as Hamish Watson headed the Kiwis in front, but we would not be beaten that easily, and early in the second half, Tommy Semi would step up and score his third of the tournament to give us the equaliser, and force extra time where we fell victim to a header again as Francis de Vrij scored, and despite outperforming the Kiwis in the stats, we lost. We would go on to finish fourth, while New Zealand of course won the whole thing. Having so far tried with 2 nations from Group B, we're going to head over to Group A next, to take charge of host nation Vanuatu. They may be ranked lower than Papua New Guinea, and have a squad of mainly domestically based players, but as hosts and in a 3-team group, perhaps we've got a chance. The players available to us meant a 4-2-3-1 was the most viable option, though our pre-tournament warm-up game suggested tough times ahead. If we were to succeed, we would have to rely on the Caltac boys. Brian, who plays for Central Coast Mariners in the A-League, and Tony up front, the joint top scorer in Vanuatu footballing history. We would also be relying on Mitch Cooper in midfield, currently without a club, and Jared Clark to create opportunities for us. And a throwback to a previous challenge I did with Stallion Laguna in the Philippines, as we called up one of the players I signed in that save, James Chillier. But it would be Cooper and Clark who got us off to a flyer against Solomon Islands, as both midfielders scored in the opening 15 minutes. Caltac then stepped up in the second half, not Tony the striker but Brian the defender, who scored twice for a 4-1 result that pretty much guaranteed our progress. We played New Zealand next, and Caltac Tony this time got us off to a dream start. We then terrorised the Kiwis with our corner routines, first Jared Clark and then Godine Tenene giving us an absolute shock 3-0 lead. A penalty let New Zealand back in it, and a late strike from Patterson made for a nervy final few minutes, but we held on for a massive win. I just wish that had been the final. New Zealand were clearly rattled by our performance and only managed a draw with Solomon Islands on the final match day, but that was enough for the Jammy Gits to advance on goal difference. We would face Papua New Guinea in the semis, and again the Caltac boys, who as far as I can tell are not related, set us on our way. Tony opening the scoring and Brian firing in from the spot. Papua New Guinea weren't in the game at all until the final 10 minutes, as they pulled one back and then managed to sneak an equaliser with less than 2 minutes on the clock. Extra time it was then, but we did not let this slip, as Tenene and then DM John Alec restored our 2-goal lead, and we got the 4-2 win, advancing to the final, where we would face New Zealand again after they beat Fiji, also by a 4-2 scoreline. So would it be too much to ask to beat the Kiwis twice in the same tournament? Well, as we took to the field in front of our home supporters, we were about to find out. We did not get off to a great start as Hamish Watson opened the scoring, and with the Kiwis dominant in possession, Monty Patterson soon made it 2. Bong Callow pulled one back early in the second half, deflecting in Alec's strike, but we were immediately 2 goals down again as Watson grabbed another. We can do corners as well though, as Jared Clark showed, and we can do domination of possession with quick passing as well, as Timuata netted an equaliser. Into extra time then, and it was New Zealand who would take the initiative, De Vrij's heading in at the far post, meaning that despite that group stage victory and having the better stats in the final, we had to watch as New Zealand lifted the trophy yet again. Okay, so back to Group B now, where we take charge of the only team in history not called Australia or New Zealand to win the OFC Nations Cup. 2012 winners Tahiti, ranked 156th as the tournament began, and despite our French connections, a squad mainly of local league players. We would be looking to the Tahau boys this time with Runui and Tia Onwi our best attacking prospects, and some young rising stars like Milimono in defence. We reverted to 3 at the back this time though, with a slightly different attacking lineup, which got us a great result against Guam, along with a narrow defeat to Solomon Islands and a goalless draw with Vanuatu in our warm-up games. It was our Tahau boys who starred against Samoa, Tiooni setting up Runui, for what proved to be the game's only goal. The second match was also settled by a single strike, but unfortunately it was scored by Papua New Guinea, leaving the group finely balanced going into the final match day. Papua New Guinea were likely to beat Samoa, meaning we would have to win against Fiji. A set of results that would leave 3 teams tied on 6 points. Sandro Tau got us off to a flying start, with Runiu Tehau doubling the lead on 14 minutes, and then we were awarded a penalty to put the result beyond doubt. Or had we perhaps spoken a bit too soon, as Fiji pulled one back in the second half, and then grabbed a second very late in the game. Thankfully, it was too late for them to snatch an equaliser, but those goals conceded in the second half would prove crucial, as they swung the goal difference in our opponent's favour, and we finished third on 6 points. So we've had 2 group stage eliminations, a 4th place finish, and a defeat in the final so far. We've got 2 chances left, or I'll never be allowed to manage in Oceania again. We went with Fiji next, the hosts of Group B, starting the tournament ranked 162nd in the world, and with a squad of players from clubs in Fiji, New Zealand, Australia, and beyond, with the legend Roy Krishna, who's currently at Odisha in the Indian Super League, as well as young Charlton defender Josh Lakera Tatbua, as well as everyone's favourite old-school World of Warcraft meme throwback, Dragons! Well, at least I had chicken. We tried another variation of 3 at the back for this one, even getting all fancy with wide centre-backs and inverted wing-backs. We drew with co-host Vanuatu in one warm-up game, and again suffered a narrow defeat to Solomon Islands in the other one. Let's hope we don't suffer the same fate as Tahiti this time. We started with a match against Papua New Guinea and got a comfortable win, scoring early through Lum and late through Dogalau for a 2-0 victory. Samoa were up next, and we seized the chance to get 6 points on the board with an impressive first half display. Monahan Valika, Sami and Nalabu getting the goals in a 3-0 win that guaranteed us qualification in top spot. A rotated team kept our form going against Tahiti as we topped the group with maximum points to qualify for the semi-finals, where we would face what? New Zealand? Yep, it seems that just like our run with Vanuatu earlier in the episode, New Zealand had scraped through Group A with a single point. So we would have to beat them in the semi-finals to have a crack at winning the whole thing. But we got off to an absolutely disastrous start as New Zealand attacked and we gave away a penalty, converted by Hamish Watson. And I'd just like to say at this point, I'd never heard of Hamish Watson before I started doing this challenge, but now he's one of my most disliked ever players. Shuaib Khan pulled one back for us on the quarter-hour mark. The game then settled into a holding pattern until Jason Hicks put the Kiwis back in front with 15 minutes left. As we pushed forward for an equaliser, we got caught out by De Vries, another player I'm getting sick of scoring against me in this challenge. We would pull one back almost immediately to make for a tense final few minutes, but the equaliser never came as we were knocked out. We would go on to claim 3rd place, while New Zealand would go on to win an absolutely crazy looking final. So once again, this is all going to come down to our final attempt at the challenge, as we take charge of the Solomon Islands. There are reasons to be optimistic, as Solomon Islands are, on paper, the strongest team not called New Zealand in the competition. Ranked 133rd in the world and with plenty of Aussie and Kiwi-based talent. Rafael Liai is our best prospect, though the winger is currently a free agent, having just spent a season at Velez Mostar in Bosnia. We also have youngster Javin Vey at centre-back, and the experience of Lialafa on the wings. Throw in S-League talents like Ali Mekawer and Gagame Feni up front, and I think we've got a decent team. Tactically, it was back to the 4-2-3-1 for this one. Our warm-up games were not the best as we failed to beat Cook Islands, and were completely outplayed by Fiji. When tournament time came around, we got off to a slow start, falling behind early on to Vanuatu. But then, everything finally started to click for this team as Don Kiana equalised, Ali Mekawir put us in the lead, and then Gagame Feni made it 3-1 before half-time. In the second half, Kamasi made sure of the result with a completely bizarre strike, but they all count and it gave us a welcome 4-1 win. With New Zealand then beating Vanuatu in the next game, we were both already through to the semi-finals, meaning the result of that final group game against New Zealand was not too important. But despite being outplayed, we nabbed a point, giving us top spot in the group on goal difference, and a match with Papua New Guinea in the semi-final round. Once again we got off to a slow start, 1 goal down after 2 minutes, but we took the lead before half-time, thanks to goals from Gagame Fene and Micah Lia Alalafa. In the second half we turned on the style with Fene on the score sheet again, and also Ali Mekawir scoring twice, either side of a goal from young Javin Way, an emphatic performance of gung-ho attacking football that would have made Kevin Keegan proud, meaning we have made it to the final once again, where we will of course play New Zealand, victors over Fiji in the other game. Last chance then, can I finally beat New Zealand in the final and win the OFC Nations Cup and therefore keep Oceania as an international management option on the channel? The pressure was on as the teams took to the field. The first half was a cagey affair with New Zealand having the edge and the best chances early on. Our first effort of note came late in the half as the Kiwi keeper was out of position, but Lia Alafa's shot was blocked. The first half finished goalless, with Solomon Islands very much second best. The first action of the second half was a corner to us and young Javin Way nodded in, soaring above a crowd of white shirts, advantage us. I was then more than happy to watch the minutes whiz by. The next chance was another corner for us, and so nearly another goal. Late on we killed time with some substitutions, and frustrated the Kiwis, nearly snatching another goal in stoppage time, and not really giving our opponents a sniff of a chance, goalkeeper Mango claiming to prevent a De Vray's effort. And that proved to be enough as we edged a tight final, New Zealand forced to watch on for a change as the Solomon Islands lifted their first ever OFC Nations Cup. So it went down to the wire, but we did it. If you enjoyed that, then check out a similar challenge I did earlier this year when I tried to win the Copa America with one of the 6 non-CONMEBOL teams in the tournament. Alternatively, see how I got on earlier in the summer with my Euro 2024 challenges here.